Elizabeth, I gave everything to your brother. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard him right. The words felt like they belonged in someone else's nightmare, not mine. I held my phone tighter as the sting of betrayal hit me. My father's voice was steady, almost cold, like he wasn't tearing down everything I'd spent my life building. Like the last 18 years meant nothing. I swallowed the lump in my throat. The view from my office window blurred as my mind raced. The company we built together, the one I gave up everything for, was no longer mine. For years, I believed I was the heart of Wilson Enterprises, that my father saw me as his partner, his successor. I was wrong. Thanks for letting me know, I said, my voice flat and calm. I heard the pause on the other end. He was expecting me to yell, to beg, to fight. But I gave him nothing. Elizabeth, I know this might seem unfair, he started, but I ended the call. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. The weight of his betrayal pressed down harder than anything I'd ever faced. But then something shifted. I took a deep breath, steady and slow. The fire inside me was still there. He thinks this is the end, but he's wrong. Wilson Enterprises wasn't just a business. It was our shared dream. I'd been there from day one. At 17, I officially joined the company. While my father had the vision, I brought the structure. I created our growth plans, saved us from collapse more than once, and turned ideas into success. But lately, things have changed. My father started cutting me out. Key meetings happened without me, and financial reports stopped coming to my desk. Decisions were made behind closed doors, with Ryan, his favorite, his golden child. While I spent my 18 THS building this company, Ryan partied across the world, wasting trust fund money like it would never run out. He never cared about Wilson Enterprises and never worked for it. But somehow, my father chose him over me. Looking back, I should have seen it. The missing documents. The secret talks with lawyers. Ryan's sudden interest in the company. I'd been too busy running the business to notice the ground shifting beneath me. Now, they thought they had won. That it was over. I stared at the mahogany desk in front of me, my fingers tapping against its polished surface. But my mind was already moving, analyzing contracts, recalling legal details, reviewing contingency plans. What they didn't know was that I never played this game blindly. I reached into the drawer and pulled out a black notebook. Inside were the real records, not the ones on file. These were private, personal, and powerful. Every hidden liability, every off-the-record deal my father made, it was all in here. If he thought he could erase me, push me out like I was nothing, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I built this company with my sacrifice. I know every flaw in its foundation, every pressure point. And I'm not done yet. I wasn't going to let them win. Leaning back in my chair, I stared out at the city skyline. This was the moment my father made his second mistake. He thought I would break. But I wasn't breaking. I wasn't grieving. I was preparing for a fight. With one last look at my phone, I stood and adjusted the sleeves of my blazer. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. I left the office early, not because I was overwhelmed or heartbroken, but because I needed space to think. Deep down, I had seen this coming. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. The drive was silent. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The streets of San Antonio blurred past. A city I had poured years of hard work into, now suddenly felt unfamiliar, colder, like it had turned its back on me too. When I pulled into my driveway, I killed the engine and sat there in the quiet. The house was empty because I had never made room for anything else. No family, no social life, no breaks. While everyone else my age was building lives, I was building Wilson Enterprises, saving it from falling apart under the weight of my father's old ways. And now it was gone. Or, at least that's what they wanted me to believe. I walked inside, tossed my keys on the counter, and headed straight to the study. The shelves were stacked with books on business, leadership, and strategy, the very things I had lived and breathed for years. But tonight, they felt meaningless. Instead, I reached for the one thing that had never failed me, my notebook. I flipped it open, scanning the pages filled with years of records. Hidden deals, quiet payments, secret accounts, all the things my father thought I hadn't noticed. But I had. I always had. Because if he taught me anything, it was this: power doesn't belong to the person with the biggest empire. It belongs to the one who knows how to take it all apart. I thought back to my childhood. The stories he used to tell, about hard work, about earning your place, about loyalty. But when it mattered, he gave everything to Ryan, the one who had never lifted a finger for it, the one who never cared. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about respect. And he had made a critical mistake. He underestimated me. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. One name stood out: Benjamin Johnson. My father's oldest friend. The man who had believed in me more than my father ever did. He helped fund Wilson Enterprises when it was just an idea scribbled on a napkin. I hit call. "Elizabeth," he answered almost instantly. His voice was warm, but there was a hint of caution. "It's been a while." "I need to meet," I said, cutting straight to the point. "It's about my father." There was a pause, then a sigh. I figured something was going on. "Meet me at the club in an hour." I grabbed my keys. If my father had decided to change the rules, then I would too. The private club hadn't changed, still filled with old money, old stories, and old power. Benjamin was in the back, nursing a glass of whiskey, watching me approach with those sharp, thoughtful eyes of his. "So," he said, swirling his drink, "tell me everything." I didn't hold back. I told him everything: the call, the betrayal, how my father handed over everything to Ryan, who didn't deserve a fraction of it. Benjamin nodded slowly as I spoke, listening carefully. His expression never shifted, but I knew him well enough to recognize what that meant. He was thinking, calculating, and so was I. "And what do you want from me?" Benjamin finally asked. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "I want to build something better. And I want my father and Ryan to feel exactly what they threw away." He studied me in silence, then let out a quiet chuckle. "Your father always said you had my ruthlessness. Then you know I won't lose." He gave a slow nod. "All right, Elizabeth. Tell me your plan." I exhaled, feeling the fire inside me burn hotter. My father had taken everything, but now I was ready to take it all back. Benjamin leaned back in his chair, that sharp, calculating look returning to his face. It was the same expression he used when weighing high-stakes business moves. This wasn't hesitation, it was strategy. "You realize," he said, slowly swirling the ice in his glass, "your father would call this a betrayal." I laughed, cold and dry. "That's funny. I thought betrayal was cutting your daughter out of the company she helped build." He smirked. "Touché." I folded my hands calmly on the table. "I don't just want revenge, Benjamin. I want to create something so strong, so undeniable, that Wilson Enterprises becomes a footnote." He set his drink down. "All right then, let's talk strategy." If I'd learned anything over the years, it was this: power isn't about owning things. It's about knowing how to control them. And my father didn't realize that I still held more control than he thought. I pulled out my phone and opened a note. "Wilson Enterprises has one major weakness right now: expansion. They've stretched the company too far, too fast. My father and Ryan are pouring money into acquisitions, trying to grow faster than the market will allow." Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "And how do you know that?" "Because I built the system they're trying to expand," I said, meeting his gaze. "I know where every crack is. And if those cracks spread, the entire company will collapse from within." He gave a low laugh. "So, you don't want to take them down directly. You want to let them destroy themselves?" Exactly. Over the last year, Wilson Enterprises had been buying into industries they didn't understand: real estate, manufacturing, logistics. It looked ambitious, but underneath, it was reckless. My father and Ryan thought their name alone would bring success. But business doesn't work like that, not anymore. "What happens when things start falling apart?" Benjamin asked, a knowing smile forming. "That's when I make my move." This wasn't just about revenge. I didn't want to just hurt them. I wanted to prove something. That I was never just a replaceable piece. that cutting me out was the biggest mistake they could have made. I need funding. I need connections. And most of all, I need the right people. Benjamin raised his eyebrows. I want to start my firm, I said. Something lean, strategic, built on smart acquisitions, not big headlines. And I want the best talent from Wilson Enterprises. He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. You are your father's daughter. I smiled, but it wasn't warm.
No.
I'm better. I had spent years building Wilson's most elite teams, training sharp thinkers and loyal experts. They trusted me, not Ryan. And when it came time to choose, I knew exactly who they'd follow. Benjamin leaned forward, curiosity gleaming in his eyes. Let me guess. You already have names. Without a word, I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was a list: top executives, analysts, managers. The people who actually kept Wilson Enterprises running. These, I said, are the ones who matter. I guarantee you, half of them would leave if they were given the right opportunity, I said. Benjamin let out a low whistle. You don't waste time, do you? I can't afford to, I replied simply. He leaned back, weighing his options. Then, with a small nod, he said the words I had been waiting for. All right, Elizabeth. I'm in. That was all I needed. Within a week, I had secured initial funding. Benjamin introduced me to a circle of investors, people who had been waiting for a chance to support a rival to Wilson Enterprises, especially one who understood exactly how to take it apart from within. The first person I called was Amy Johnson, head of risk management and one of my earliest mentors. She had watched me grow, supported me through the toughest decisions, and knew just how much of the company's success had come from my work. Elizabeth, she answered immediately. I heard what happened. It's insane. I'm building something new, I told her. And I want you with me. There was a pause, then her voice came back, calm and sure. Tell me where to sign. And just like that, the pieces started moving. By the end of the week, I had 4 key people. By the end of the month, and the best part? My father didn't see any of it coming. They thought I'd walk away quietly, disappear. But they were wrong. I sat in my new office, staring down at the official incorporation papers for my firm. Wilson Enterprises had tried to strip everything from me. Instead, they pushed me to build something stronger. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my father's number. For a brief moment, I thought about calling him, telling him exactly what I was about to do. But then I smiled and set the phone down. He'd find out soon enough. The first domino had fallen, and in the weeks that followed, the momentum turned into something unstoppable. More people left Wilson Enterprises, some quietly, some with a bang, but all of them with the same goal: to work with me. I didn't have to steal talent. I didn't need to beg or bribe. I knew who felt overlooked, who had grown tired of Ryan's poor leadership, who wanted a future outside a sinking ship, and that ship was sinking. I had spent years watching my father run the company based on loyalty and legacy, not smart decisions. That used to work when I was there to balance it with strategy and innovation. But with Ryan in charge, it was only a matter of time. The first big crack showed up in a failed acquisition. Wilson Enterprises had been negotiating to buy Strategizing, a mid-sized logistics firm that would have strengthened their supply chain. It was a high-stakes deal, one I had started before being cut out. Now, Ryan had taken the lead.
And he completely botched it.
The headlines started rolling in. Wilson Enterprises fumbles key acquisition as CEO's son mismanages deal. Strategizing walks away. Citing leadership concerns, I read every article with quiet satisfaction. Ryan had overpromised, misunderstood the numbers, and pushed Strategizing into the arms of another company. A company I had personally advised. A company now working directly with me. It wasn't the end of Wilson Enterprises, not yet. But it was the first visible crack in the foundation. And I knew my father was watching it all unfold. 3 days after the Strategizing news broke, my phone buzzed while I was reviewing expansion plans for my firm. I glanced at the screen. Dad, I let it ring. Then, just before it hit voicemail, I answered. Elizabeth, he said. His voice was tight, controlled. But I could hear it, underneath that calm surface. He was rattled. But even through his calm voice, I could hear it. the tension just beneath the surface. "I assume you've seen the news," he said. I leaned back in my chair, a slow, satisfied smile forming. "I have." There was a pause. "Did you have something to do with this?" I let the silence hang for a few seconds, then exhaled quietly. "Dad," I said calmly, "you made it very clear I was out. Why would I have anything to do with Wilson Enterprises?" He sighed, and I could almost feel the weight pressing down on him. "We need to talk." There it was. The first crack in his pride. A hint of regret. But I wasn't ready for that conversation, not yet. "I'm busy," I replied smoothly. "You'll have to find another time." Before he could respond, I ended the call. For the first time in my life, I was the one walking away from him, and I wasn't the only one watching things unravel. That evening, I got a message from Amy, my former mentor, now my partner in rebuilding something new. "Amy, Ryan's losing it. Called an emergency meeting. Blamed internal sabotage. People are starting to wonder if he even knows what he's doing." I smirked. Of course, Ryan was panicking. He was never good under pressure. Now, with the media circling, investors panicking, and top talent walking out, he was drowning, and I was only getting started. Because this wasn't just about Ryan. I was going after my father's legacy. The company he built, the reputation he spent decades protecting. Wilson Enterprises wasn't just a business. It was a name, an empire, and it was falling apart from the inside. All I had to do was give it a little push. I picked up the phone and called Benjamin.
"It's time," I said.
"You sure?" he asked. "Ryan's cracking. My father's doubting him. Investors are getting cold feet. If we move now, we can take some of their biggest contracts before they even notice." Benjamin let out a low laugh. "You are ruthless, Elizabeth." I smiled, but there was no kindness in it. I learned from the best. The trap was already set. Now all I had to do was wait. The next phase was simple. Weaken them further. Take what matters before they can react. Let the damage they created eat them alive. I had spent years being the perfect daughter, the loyal heir, the quiet voice in the background. Not anymore. Now I was watching them burn. Ryan was already losing control. I watched from a distance as the company that had once been my whole world slowly started to crumble under the weight of his mistakes. At first, it was just a few missed deadlines, then a weak financial quarter. But it didn't stop there. It spiraled. Fast, and I made sure to be there, right behind the scenes, making it worse. After the Stratnix tech deal collapsed, Wilson Enterprises didn't just lose a partnership, they lost their credibility. Investors weren't just concerned anymore, they were nervous. Then came the resignations. It started with the executives I had quietly pulled into my new firm, but soon others followed. Managers, analysts, the people who actually kept the company running. Clients hesitated. Contracts expired without renewal. Trust vanished, and the best part? I hadn't even lifted a finger. Ryan was doing it all on his own. The second call from my father came late one night. I was in my office, reviewing a contract for our latest acquisition, ironically the same account that once belonged to Wilson Enterprises. The moment wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring 5 times before picking up. "Dad." This time, his voice wasn't stern or confident. It was something else, something I had never heard from him before. Desperation. "Elizabeth, listen, we need to talk. In person." I leaned back in my chair, drumming my fingers on the desk.
"About what?"
A pause. Then a heavy sigh. "Ryan's struggling. The board is concerned. There are financial issues that need addressing." Financial issues. That was putting it lightly. The truth was simple. Wilson Enterprises was bleeding. Every failed deal, every poor decision Ryan made, chipped away at what was left of Wilson Enterprises. "And you think I can help?" I asked, feigning innocence. My father's voice softened, lower, almost like someone I didn't recognize. "Elizabeth, please. I know you're angry, but you're still part of this family. You've always been the smartest one. We need you." There it was, finally. The truth I'd known all along, spoken out loud. But it didn't matter anymore. It was too late. The next morning, I met them at his office. The tension was thick, almost heavy in the air. Ryan was already seated, stiff and pale. His usual smug grin was gone. He knew. They both knew. "Elizabeth," my father began, his voice carefully measured. "We need to restructure the company. The losses have been significant." "Define significant," I said, folding my arms. Without a word, he slid a folder across the desk. I opened it. There it was. Wilson Enterprises was on the edge of bankruptcy. Everything my father had built from the ground up was crumbling, all because he handed it to the wrong person. I closed the folder and looked him in the eye. "What do you want from me?" He hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, "Come back. Help us fix this." I could have laughed. I could have thrown the folder in his face and walked away. But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence grow. I wanted them to feel it, the shift, the collapse of their control. Ryan sat there, speechless. The golden child, once so untouchable, looked scared. "And if I don't?" I asked. My father sighed. "Then we lose everything." I tapped my nails on the folder. This was the moment I'd waited for. They had pushed me aside and believed I was replaceable. And now they were asking me to save them. "I'll think about it," I said smoothly, rising to my feet. Ryan's head jerked up. "Wait, what?" "Dad, she can't just. She can do whatever she wants," my father cut in sharply. Ryan's mouth snapped shut. I turned to leave. I had already won, and the best part? They still had no idea what I was going to do next. I didn't return to Wilson Enterprises. I ignored the calls. I deleted the emails. Even the carefully worded letters from my father, each one more desperate than the last, I left unanswered. I let them sit in silence, unsure and scrambling, watching everything fall apart while wondering if I'd come back. But I had other plans. Exactly 1 month after that meeting, the news broke. Wilson Enterprises files for bankruptcy amid leadership collapse. The headlines were brutal. They told it all: failed deals, mass resignations, mismanagement at the top. Ryan's name was everywhere, the face of the fall. However, the part that caught my attention was the section about the company's assets. Wilson Enterprises wasn't just failing. It was being sold off, piece by piece, and I had been waiting for this moment. I sat in a sleek, modern conference room while a team of lawyers and advisors finalized the documents in front of me. The room was calm, professional, nothing like the chaos inside Wilson's boardroom. My lawyer slid the final contract toward me. "It's official," he said. "Your firm now owns the most valuable assets of Wilson Enterprises." I picked up the pen and signed my name. That was it. With one signature, I took everything my father had built, without him even seeing it coming. Ryan thought he was playing a power game. My father thought he was preserving his legacy. They were both wrong. I wasn't trying to win their game. I had rewritten the rules, and I had already won. The truth is, while they were busy playing checkers, I was playing chess. I didn't just take over the company. I claimed the most valuable parts. The top clients. The most profitable departments. The very people who had built the foundation from day one. What I left behind was nothing more than an empty shell. A name stripped of meaning. A legacy that no longer belonged to them. I never expected my father to reach out again. But one afternoon, as I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports, my assistant knocked on the door. "Miss Wilson," she said quietly, "your father is here." I looked up, surprised. I hadn't seen him in weeks. "Send him in." When he walked through the door, I barely recognized him. He looked older, worn down, like a man who had finally come to terms with everything he'd lost. He paused for a moment, taking in my office, the company I had built, the success he once doubted I could achieve. "You did it," he said softly. I did. A heavy silence filled the room. Then he spoke again. "You could have come back. You could have helped fix things. We could have done it together." I leaned back in my chair, calm but firm. "No, Dad. You could have fixed it."
But you didn't want to.
"You had your mind set on Ryan being the golden child. You wanted to believe I wasn't necessary." I gestured around my office. Now you finally understand what I've always known. It was never about the company name. It was about the people who built it. His jaw clenched. I could see him struggling to find words, to explain, to defend his choices. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because deep down, he knew I was right. I made a mistake, he whispered. For a fleeting moment, something inside me cracked. A part of me, the daughter who once admired him, wanted to forgive. But then I remembered how easily he cast me aside. I remembered every time I had to fight for recognition, only to be told I wasn't enough.
So I stayed silent.
After a moment, he gave a slow, silent nod, his way of admitting defeat. Then, without another word, he turned and left my office. This time, I didn't look back. The truth is, I never needed Wilson Enterprises. I never needed his approval. What I needed was the freedom to build something that was mine. And that's exactly what I did. Power isn't handed to you. It's earned. And in the end, I didn't just take what they overlooked, I took it all.